Welcome to that time every Thursday, and it is time to catch up with our friend at El Rolo and W on the Twitters, and Nico Moreno for Thursdays with Nico. But Nico, something's missing.
Yes, the coffee. The coffee's missing, my man. The coffee. I ain't got nothing but some good old H2O.
Okay, so you got the dihydrogen oxide. You're gonna stay nice and hydrated for this. All right, so that is an interesting alternative. We'll see how it goes here for the next little bit. But it's that time on Thursdays where we catch up with you, get your thoughts about what's going on in Seattle and the West and MLS and going all over the place. And so let's just go ahead and start off with what happened last weekend. I think it was 27 lineup changes from Champions League to get ready for the Inter Miami match. I know that Miami got the Duke 1-0, but what was the initial reaction after Inter Miami got full points against a heavily rotated side for Seattle?
I mean, to put it in one word, it was I mean, that's kind of what the reaction was. To be quite frank, from my end, I know that there was a lot of fans who were not pleased, excited, and even took it as offensive that the team would put up a lineup that way. However, in all reality, this team needed those rotations. I believe I mentioned it during our last show as well that was going to happen. The trip over from New York, the minutes played, what's coming up, a very tight schedule for the Seattle Sounders here. You have to make those rotations. And there was a lot of players that needed that time. Jimmy Medranda being one of them. He has not started a game all season. Didn't look good. Probably the worst 45 minutes I've seen him play with the Seattle Sounders jersey, but that is what you're trying to get rid of, right? Is those that the little bit of rust that sometimes stays with players when they've been out of the game for so long. You can practice, you can, do rehab, you can exercise, but there's nothing like game rhythm. Danny Leyva is another player that's a young, upcoming talent that needed to play. He got a start. Leo Chu, Freddie Montero, Will Bruin. So all these guys just needed some minutes, and he wasn't horrible either. I mean, yes, the left flank was a disaster, and that was where Jedlin and Lassiter just kind of walked into the final end, the end line, and made it very difficult for Seattle. But Seattle was able to put it together, and at the end of the game, I thought that they had plenty of chances to tie this one up, or even win it. So understandable in terms of the changes on the field. I think that you need to see what some of these players have to offer because you do have a tight schedule, and at the same time, you were going into playing a Inter Miami team that was not great, and now you're going into a San Jose team that is also not just bad on paper and bad on the field, but now is having this whole thing with Matias Almeida. So I just think it's understanding, and I wasn't too concerned with that loss against Inter Miami.
Yeah, because you're giving quality minutes to folks like Josh Atencia, like Danny Leyva, like Obed Vargas continuing to impress. And the the main notion from Brian Schmetzer has always been just because you're not getting the minutes or just because you're part of a rotated side doesn't mean the expectation is different. I anticipate that everyone that walks in to Starfire and is practicing on a daily basis, when I call your name, I expect you to go out there and give your best. So, I mean, just because it's a rotated side doesn't mean that you're going to kind of sit there and go, oh, nah. But, I mean, that's just the way that it's always been with Schmetzer. It's like when I call your name, I expect you to give your best for however many minutes I call on you.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And at times, specifically in this game, it's hard to really rate players individually because there were so many changes that you really have to go in hard to think about what each player did because they haven't played with each other. This is a system that also relies on chemistry and the ability to just understand where players are at. And in this specific one, there were so many changes that it was kind of hard. It's very different to make a substitution and bring Danny Leva with Joao Paulo next to him and Nicolas Odero, playing that midfield position, than it is to bring him into a squad that hasn't really played together with a Freddie Montero playing a 10 position that's not really natural to him. So just all of those things can really be factors. But at the end of the day, that's what you wanted to see. You get everybody out there, you really do the homework and the video analyzing, and you find out what each player did. And I think that was a positive for this team. Just like you said, Brian is the type of guy that's going to want to bring in guys to perform. And now he got a better look at some of these guys. And the next time they get a call up, they're going to be more prepared. Leo Chu being one of those players as well. He looked good offensively, but still lacks a lot defensively. Can be a little bit, I don't want to call it lazy, but just perhaps doesn't have the range to get back and really win duels. So, all of those things are, I'm sure, will be used this week to make each one of those players better, and that's a positive for the Seattle Sounders.
So you mentioned San Jose, and I want to get into the two managerial changes that happened in the last week. Matias Almeida, we've been talking about it a lot. We figured that there would be a time when his departure would come. It has finally come. And DC with Hernan Losada, we were trying to figure out, who, with Almeida gone, who would be the next on the hottest seat. And it turned out to be Losada. What did you think about San Jose finally parting ways with Almeida, and then what we got out of DC a couple days ago?
Well, to be frank, I was very surprised on the DC side and Losada, but the Matias Almeida was the train that you were waiting for that was late a bunch of hours, and he finally got there. I don't think anybody was surprised. It was written on the wall. It was something that was deteriorating the more time spent. And
because there was the video that came out where it almost in that last home match where you see the guy yelling at Matias Almeida, and there was almost a confrontation on a catwalk. I mean, it had gotten that bad.
Yeah, he tried to get down the stairs, and yeah, I mean, it was a bad situation from all aspects. The fan base was demanding results. They're a passionate fan base, and they're allowed to do that. Matias Almeida was frustrated with how everything has played out. So his own bad performances as a coach, because there have been some questionable calls this season, like Ewell playing center back and, some of the approaches to these games. So, some of his own inflicted wounds, he's not even looking at because he's so frustrated with everything. He's trying to blame everybody. So it was just a bad situation. Bad from a management point, bad from Matias Almeida as a coach and as an individual. He wasn't going to the presses. He was having issues with fans. I mean, it was just bad overall. And then the team, every single player in that squad being affected by everything, and it just needed to get done. So I think it's a positive for a San Jose team that does not have a bad roster. You look at what San Jose could offer, Woody Bogusi and Gregus, and there is talent in that team. So perhaps with the new coach, I'm not as positive as some of my colleagues where they think they're going to make the playoffs and all of this, that the roster is good enough. I don't see it that way. I just think that they will at least have a positive environment, a internal momentum just to try to get behind the new coach and all of that. But I don't think that's going to push him to a playoff spot. But I do think that he's going to get better. On the Losada end, I was very surprised. I thought that they were going to give him time to really put his vision into fruition on the field. He was just starting to really get it going. And I found it odd that DC United would today, and at this particular moment in time, decide to make that move and that change when you hadn't really seen what Losada could do. Because with a coach, you got to give him at least 3 years to just figure out what where he's going, and he hasn't gotten all the tools that he needed either. It hasn't been an amazing roster. He's probably lost more pieces than he's gained. So that's why I was very surprised at that particular move. So I'm on board with San Jose. It was necessary. Finally, the telenovela is done and over with, and you can just focus on soccer. But on the Losada end, I do think that there was a disservice to that squad, to that team, those guys that were brought in, and for the future of the squad.
Well, and I mean, there's been talk about disagreements between Losada and the front office, and then the whole fitness first thing where it was almost like boot camp, and Julian Gressel, I think, said that it was, he lost like 10 pounds or 15 pounds or something like that getting adjusted to Losada's system. And I think there were 15 player changes. I think that's a number that sticks in my head from something that I wrote. But, when you have this kind of strife, whether we're talking about Matias Almeida or Hernan Losada, when you're talking San Jose and DC, I mean, you wonder where the level of patience is with discord and discontent. And I think that San Jose went a lot longer than folks were anticipating. I don't think, first and foremost, with San Jose, I don't think that Almeida should have been brought back this season. I think that was probably the first mistake that San Jose made. They kept him around for 7 matches too long. I don't think that he should have been brought back this year.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assessment. And if there is a common denominator in both of these firings, it just shows you how poorly perhaps those decisions were made, right? I mean, we all criticize Atlanta United for the Frank de Boer debacle. I think in this one, you have to look at DC United bringing in the youngest head coach in the league. You understood and knew what his program was. You went with it, and now you're complaining that that's what's happening. So we knew from the very beginning, from year one, and I'm sure that, or I hope that in those interviews and in the hiring process, you figure out, hey, this is this guy's curriculum. Sounds interesting. Let's bring it on. So once you make that decision, then why are you surprised today that players are complaining that things aren't going the way you wanted because this guy has this strong regimen? And with the Matias Almeida, and it is my understanding that what he was presented with is not what he was provided in terms of players and development programs and the vision overall of the franchise. So just bad decision making, bad protocol on onboarding these coaches from both clubs. So I think that's the common denominator here.
Okay, and I know that you and I have always agreed to disagree when it comes to DeBoer and Atlanta United. That would be a separate Thursdays with Niko, with you and me. We would seriously. I mean, you and I, brother, we would probably go 15-round battle royal on that one. But and I mean, I know that in San Jose, there were players that were brought in that Almeida wanted. Chofis, Alanis, I think Fierro was another one. There were like a handful of players that were brought in. And I think that now you're dealing with situations in these two markets, and Jason brought this up on the show yesterday, where you have blank slates in both of these places with both teams. They get to figure out who they are, and now it's bringing in a manager who can, and you can look at this one of two ways. A manager that will agree with the philosophy that the team wants to set forward with their identity, or a manager who wants to come in with an identity that the team will sit there and say, yeah, okay, we dig that. And this is an interesting place for both of these because you have blank slates now in both of these locations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think San Jose will go that identity and club side, right, with the new coach and Wondolowski being an assistant. And when you look at the league, there is a new tendency to work with managers and assistants within the league. And I think Chris Leach might have said something, or as I remember the press conference going, that kind of might have indicated that that's the route they might go with. It's just an in MLS type coach to come and help this team. Because look, San Jose has a really good academy. There's some young prospects. There's some young talent. So if you bring in the right type of guy, that could just be a better outlook for everybody in the club. And you're not expending that DP coach money, right? Because when you brought Matias Almeida, he got a nice chunk of change. So now you can alleviate that by bringing in a coach that is in within MLS. uh, you could stick with this inner head coach and then see how that plays out. But if you don't, then maybe you bring in a Freddie Juarez. Maybe look at some of those assistant coaches like Mark Dos Santos and have them work with your team. I don't know if I would say that about DC. I really don't know which way they're going to go.
Yeah.
They have been very unpredictable in that end. Even when Lasada came in, I had no idea that's the route that we're going to take. So I'd be more willing to put my chips on. It sounds like San Jose is on the right path than DC United.
And you mentioned Mark Dos Santos, and so let me get back into talking about what's going on out west. Dos Santos now an assistant under Steve Cherundolo in LAFC, and I think one of the biggest transactions that I think is at least underrated on this side of the Mississippi was picking up Maxime Crépeau, and tremendous shot stopper in Vancouver. The past relationship with Mark Dos Santos, a key part of the defense of LAFC. And I don't think we've really used those two terms in the same sentence a whole lot the last couple of years, defense and LAFC. But LAFC, once again, puts up a number on Sporting on an absolute worldie from Ismail Tajuri-Shradi. I mean, that goal that Tajuri-Shradi had was ridiculous. LAFC,
love those bangers.
consider LAFC, they're putting up stuff right now, and the level of worry I think that we all have about Sporting continues to increase.
Yes, no, that team is way too dependent on the offensive end, on Russell and Salawi. Shelton has not really cut it to be that goal maker, right? And that's not who he is really. Alan Polito's situation was really hurt this team on that end. You brought in a guy who you thought was going to be the game changer. He was going to be your Carlos Vela, your Chicho Arango, right? He was going to be your guy, and he just hasn't been able to do that because of injuries. And then you go back to the defensive end, and look, Susi is a great guy. He's been a legend with U.S. soccer and MLS in general, but he's just not fully there to play in this intensity, in this formation. And he's not the only one to blame, but I
Father
think that
Time is undefeated, brother. You and I both know that.
exactly. Well, look, and what I'm saying is that both of the fullbacks for this team have not been great. I think that the center midfielders are also very limited, and because of that, a guy like Fontes, that's typically a very good center back, is really struggling because that back line stretches out so far deep, and when he has to push up a little bit higher to just kind of be the first guy on that line of defense, then it gets really combobulated and disconnected. There's a lot of dysfunction in the way Sporting Kansas City defense, and it's odd to see because that's one thing that Peter Vermes has always done is the fundamentals are always there. I don't see it, and I think it is because of the lack of depth of the roster, lack of not talent, but perhaps uh, physicality in certain positions of the team. So yes, I think Sporting Kansas City is in some trouble. This is no longer a fluke or they might get it back. There's gonna have to be some changes. They're gonna have to bring in some people because it's starting to look really difficult.
Well, and once again, they don't have Polito because of injury. And what do you think the response was from Sporting Kansas City fans looking across the pitch and seeing Ilie with LAFC with everything that's going on with Sporting right now?
And it has to be a dagger in the heart. I mean, Ilya has been so good with LAFC this season. Man, they haven't had that type of guy in LAFC to just kind of put it all together in that midfield since Atuesta. So he just has looked that good. I think Kellen, you have a lot of options though. If with whether it's Kellen and Blessing in that center midfield, kind of working around what at times looks like an inverted triangle. It just works. It has been one of the better signings across MLS when you look at the productivity, the value, and what he's been able to do. So yeah, it has to hurt to see Sanchez do as well as he's done with LAFC when you knew he was a guy that you could have probably kept.
What did you think about Tati putting up 4 against RSL in a 6-0 win?
Man, that one was also a surprise to me. I mean, I had no idea that New York City was going to come out guns blazing. Uh, I mean, they really did. I mean, no more CONCACAF Champions League on your mind, and you just become this uh, tractor and just taking over a Real Salt Lake team that was not bad, that had not been bad over the season, and I just think they had no answers in this one. The way that New York City played this game was fantastic, and that those players in the final third were just so effective. They were so dangerous. I thought Santi Rodriguez had been having some good games, but in this one he was very good. I thought Thiago Andrade was very good. Obviously, Tati being able to find space and get in dangerous positions and finishing, and he's giving you what you've been waiting for the whole year. I mean, some of us that have him in fantasy MLS, we've even moved on from him a little bit, and all of a sudden he just goes off. So no, I think this team has a lot of talent. I think that they were in a position where playing CONCACAF Champions League and Liga MLS is difficult, but at the end of the day, they have the talent, they have the players, and they just showed up to play against RSL.
So then let me ask you about the team I think that is in second in the West. It's the team that is separating LAFC from LA Galaxy in the standings. Austin goes on the road. DC United, Ola Kamara scores, takes off his shirt, gets a yellow. Then commits a stupid foul. And last time I checked, 2 yellows equals a red. DC had a lead. They lost it. DC's not very good. Yeah, they played in the crappy weather and beat Flower City Union in Open Cup, but then Losada goes. Austin, second place in the West with a road victory.
I think that I've been high on this team, and I do like a lot of those pieces and the way that they play, and Wolf's coaching style and what he's been able to kind of put in concepts very deep within this team. But I do think that they struggle at times, and this was one of those games where. Man, I thought that it was over. I mean, yes, it's remarkable to come back the way they did and do it as late as they did. And yes, you have the Rusi and Hosen is coming back to this squad. But I don't know if they have enough consistency for me to say that they're going to be a top 5 team. I think they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I do see a lot of things like I was able to watch that Austin game for Open Cup, and that team that played Austin was, I mean, San Antonio, right? San Antonio, Austin. That team that played that San Antonio team was, that you had a lot of starters in that one, and they were not able to really put it away, and they allow San Antonio to get back into the game, and it goes into overtime, and that's the type of situation that you don't expect out of a team that you thought was as deep as they were, and that they had a lot of their starters on there. So I do think that at some point the lack of consistency will go and bite them if they're not careful. Johan Valencia has been a little bit underwhelming for what I thought he could do in MLS. Maybe it is an adapting learning curve to the MLS. Maybe something about the system that's not quite working with him. But Johan Valencia is someone who I thought was going to come and do damage, and he didn't look good against DC United, and I don't think he did good or look good in this Open Cup game. So definitely, I see some inconsistencies in this team. So I don't think they are going to stay at second very long, but they do have the talent level and the coaching to just make the playoffs.
Yeah, and this week they get some home cook in Vancouver, who is not doing well out of the blocks this season, goes to Q2 to take on Austin on Saturday, if my math is correct. Let's get into the week that will be, and this will include our CONCACAF Champions League discussion, because by the next time that you are hanging out with us, next Thursday, the first leg will have already happened, so we'll get into that too. When you look at Seattle goes to San Jose and gets the first match in the post-Almeida era. Once again, what are you looking at from Seattle? How much rotation, considering what's happening with the first leg coming up in a week's time? What are you looking at from Seattle traveling to PayPal?
Well, talking to Brian Smetzer this week, he sounds like he's going to put a stronger team, perhaps something closer to the starting lineup. I would think that at least 3 or 4 rotations would be making this one, but he's going to want to put a strong team. That's the way he just labeled it. He talked about the Minnesota United game where they had a pretty strong team, and then they pulled out some players, put some in halftime. So I think that he's going to be somewhere close to that. You won't see 10 new players in this one like the way you saw in Miami, that's for sure. But I do think that there will be some minute management for guys like Raul Ruiz, Nicolas Odero. I think you have to try to keep Christian Roldan a little bit fresh as well. I don't see Javier Arriaga starting in this one. He just went 90 again. And with Yeimar Gomez Andrade being back full at training this week, I think that you will see him start this one just to see where he's at, where that ankle is, get him back in game rhythm, and you might put him next to Jackson Reagan that did not play last game. So that's an interesting pairing. I think that's what you will see against San Jose, and they're not taking this lightly. They understand that. In talking to all the players this week, or a lot of them, they all understand that when you have a new coach, it's difficult to prepare for a game. You don't know which way they're going to attack, what tactics they're going to use, how they're going to set up, and it could be a booster in terms of that um, just a quick boost, right? The energy level might be higher. Guys want to show up to play, and that could really make a team difficult to play. So that's why I think Seattle's going to put some of those starting players in there, but with some rotation. Obviously, the only point and the main point in this one is being very careful in terms of injury and minutes, because whether people want to admit it or not, there is a historic game coming up, and that's what you want to focus on. That's going to be objective number one, and San Jose is just the next game. And that's just the way I see it. I know that every player is going to tell you it's all about the next game, not in this one. You have to be thinking about playing in the FA. A Pumas team that's very good, and having your best possible lineup for that one.
Going quickly through the rest of the weekend before we talk about Champions League, and one note out of Liga MX that I want to get into before we go. You've got Copa Tejas this week, Dallas and Houston. Philadelphia in an interesting one hosting Montreal. DC gets New England Revolution, first match out of the blocks without Losada. One that would be a TV audio truck guy's either nightmare or found jewels, with Sporting Kansas City and Columbus Crew having an open microphone on the touchline with Peter Vermes and Caleb Porter. That could be gold in and of itself. Portland with RSL, who just lost to Northern Colorado in the Open Cup. Galaxy hosting Nashville is interesting. Then on Sunday, you're looking at Orlando City Red Bulls, New York City, and Toronto, the last match of the weekend. When you look at the other week upcoming, other than what you're looking at with Seattle and San Jose, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think you cover most of it. I do like that LA Galaxy Nashville game because of what the LA Galaxy have been able to do, because these are two contenders for playoff spots. I'm still expecting some of those teams in the West that are usually in that playoff positions to come up, right? I mean, because right now, out of the teams within playoffs right now, only two of them were in the last season, and that's Real Salt Lake and Minnesota as crazy as that sounds coming out of my lips. But I think that you will see some movement. So because of that, I think Nashville and the LA Galaxy is probably one of the games that I will be looking at. I've been, like I said, I've been enjoying the LA Galaxy. I'm not ready to buy their stock just yet, but
Okay.
I see where the project is going. And playing a team like Nashville that has a process and identity that are difficult to play might be a very good line to figure out where the LA Galaxy are really at. So that's the game I'm really going to be watching.
CONCACAF Champions League. I think that you and I have heard of this. Champions League Leg 1 is next Wednesday night, and it's CONCACAF Champions League after dark with a 10:30 Eastern start. Pumas and Seattle. What has the vibe been like heading into this first leg, knowing that yes, the next match is San Jose, but you're focusing on that road trip to Pumas right now? Juice boxes, courtesy of our friends in the Composite Odds portal. Pumas is a minus 137. Your 90-minute draw plus 282, and Seattle on the road is a plus 343 in the composite heading into League One. What has been the level of anticipation from all of the fans and everyone associated with this program getting ready for Leg One?
I mean, everybody's talking about the game. Garth did a fantastic way of doing this WWE slash I don't know, Roman Empire entrance, telling everybody to be here for May 4th. Everybody is talking about it, even if you're not usually talking about the Sounders. I'm talking about all the local channels, radio. I mean, it's been all over. This city has really gotten close to what, or at least understands what's at stake here. And I just think the anticipation is huge. Obviously, you got to go play in Mexico. I will be in Ciudad de F for this one. I'm gonna be out there just to see what the feeling is like in Mexico for a CONCACAF Champions League that at times Mexican teams don't really focus so much on, or they do, but it doesn't mean as much because they've won it so many times. So I'm really curious to see what that atmosphere is down there. According to everything that we've been able to read, that stadium has been completely sold out already for that particular game. So, I'm really interested to see how that's going to play out. But the anticipation from this team is huge. All the players have done a good job at continuously telling you that San Jose is the most important game right now. But looking at the in between the lines, you know that the expectation is there. Guys like Joe Paulo have been very, very um, out there this week. They have been very vocal. They have been very vocal with all of the players. They have been having small meetings. You can tell that there's something big coming up. You just feel it in the air. So because of that, I can tell you that every single person in this organization is looking into this first leg. And the anticipation is definitely there.
Only a couple of matches left in the Clausura before the playoffs. Right now, Pumas is 11th in the table at 5 wins in 15, 4 draws, 6 losses, and pretty much depending on your matches to what they do. Their last 3, they are 1-1-1. Pumas 11th in the table, and the team that's with them at 5-4-6, although their goal difference is horrendous at -5 compared to +3, is León. León has lost 3 in a row, and this was my Liga MX note that I wanted to catch up with you with before we go. Ariel Holan has resigned as club manager after the 2-0 loss to America last night, where they were, a man down for at least 40 minutes. Club's third straight, sitting in the final postseason spot. Ariel Holan, right now, with León, very, very tenuous, getting into the Clausura playoffs. 12th right now, but we all know the patience level of folks in Liga MX. It does not exist when it comes to managers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That Holland has been. I like him as a coach. He did some great things in Argentina. I thought he did some great things with Leon, but maybe his course had ran out. I know that there's been issues with a lot of players, and to the point of almost going into blows. I mean, there's just been so much negative happening with Leon that it's obvious that that's another situation where a manager had to go. But going back to the whole Pumas and how they are in Liga MX. Um, a lot like Seattle, I think they're focusing completely this Champions League.
Yeah.
The club hasn't won a title in a while. They are really hungry for one, and they're going to put all their chips for this one. It was good to kind of look at where they're at in terms of players. This is a very short roster. And that's kind of odd to say, from an MLS standpoint, where everybody just thinks that Liga MX teams are so much more expensive and they have you know, more finance going into the roster. This is a very short roster in terms of talent and the players that Lilini tries to use for this one. So going to the back to the juice boxes, I do think that Seattle's the heavy favorite on this one, just because of what they've been able to do within the CCL. Right, they have the best goal differential. They have the assist leader. They have beat the most prominent teams in a more convincing fashion than maybe Pumas has. They've played at Estadio Leon, that I think weighs heavier than Universitario Olímpico. So because of all those things, I really do think that Seattle has everything in their favor, and they should be favored. I asked Brian about that. He did not really give me an answer. He just he obviously said that he has talented players that could be game changers in every single position on the field. So he feels confident, but he does not think that they're the favorite, and he would not count out Pumas, and he shouldn't, right? For this first leg, Ortiz will be gone. He was ejected in the last game. So that's going to be a heavy missing piece for this Pumas team that might keep Alan Mozo a little bit more contained, being a guy that likes to get forward as much as he does. So Seattle could have some chances to maybe surprise Pumas away over there and maybe get a quick result. I don't see them being very defensive. I think they are going to go pressure. For a little bit, I thought that maybe they would go with a three-man back line, but taking a look at how well they're playing, they might just go with the typical 4-2-3-1 and really get out there to not just get a result, but actually get a big win in the FA.
Because the biggest thing that we always like to say is that in that first leg, you can't win it, but you certainly can lose it. And that is not the mentality that is being shown by Brian Schmetzer and the Seattle Sounders with that. That's
right. You are absolutely correct. I love that. And that kind of defines things. Freddie Montero kind of talked a little bit about that this week. He said, the most important thing when you're playing this final is understanding that the first game is not definitive, but it is important to handle it. So that goes along those lines. And I think that Seattle will take a couple of risks on that first leg, but we'll have a game plan in case things are not going their way. They do have the pieces to be very defensive, to be difficult to break down. They've proven that against Leon. They've proven that against New York City FC in the last game. They have a stud at goalkeeper with Stephen Fry, so they have all the components to play a little bit more conservative. But I think that they will start this game pressuring a little bit higher, coming at Leon and maybe coming at Pumas and putting them a little bit on their back heels.
Time for the promo, my friend. What is going on at Pulso Sports with what you are doing, what everyone at Pulso Sports is doing, and what do we need to look out for from you?
Well, definitely book my plane ticket, so you will get Niko in Mexico. Obviously, I will be reaching out to a couple of my colleagues around the league to do either a roundtable in terms of this CONCACAF Champions League final. I will have any interviews that are done in Mexico. I did hear that there will be availability from Seattle Sounders. So, yeah, definitely. If you want to get content in terms of this final, check out Pulso Sports on YouTube, pulsosports.com, and follow me at El Rolo NW, as well as our Pulso Sports on Twitter and Facebook. We're going to be all over trying to cover this final. We'll be obviously on the first leg, clearly on the second leg. So there's going to be a lot coming from us in the next couple of weeks.
Loving it, and just be safe, my friend, and hopefully we will hear from you next Thursday in a locale to be determined with the result from the first leg of CONCACAF Champions League. Niko, thanks for hanging out with us on Thursday, and fix get the coffee situation figured out,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, I'm on my way to Costco, man. My Keurig just messed up, blew up on me, and I'm hurting right now. If it wasn't because I love y'all so much, I would probably have just canceled this whole call because I'm getting a headache just thinking about the fact that I have no coffee and I've been up since 6.